Now I'm very excited to welcome back Mr. Paul Stone from Stone Sports in Veasan. You can follow Paul on Twitter at Paul Stone Sports. Paul, my man, March is what, a day away here? I'm ready. How the heck you doing?
Doing well, doing well. Like you, Kiev, March always an exciting time of the sports calendar, and man, I think we've got I know obviously Auburn getting a lot of love, Duke, not too far behind in many people's mind, but I think there's a lot of teams, maybe 8 or 10 teams that have a chance to win it all. So I think it's going to be another great tournament, and probably my favorite sporting event of the year is March Madness.
I think mine too, my man. There's nothing better. As much of a college football fan that you and I both are, there's just nothing like March Madness. It means springtime. It means do or die. It means Cinderellas. There's just so much drama that goes into it, and so much fun watching and betting on these games, filling out brackets, doing Calcuttas, doing your survivors. It's got everything, man. And then all of a sudden March is over, everything stops. it just stops, man. But you know what? We can use a break from time to time. I know there's some golf going on with the Masters and everything. And you know what? I'll throw a few bets out there, just like I'm betting, NBA or something, right? I don't pay attention too much to golf. I got other guys for that. But it's going to be a fun finish here because we have just so much to talk about, my man. It's funny that you just talked about Auburn and Duke, all the love. I mean, very deserved show, but like deservedly so. But let's just quick, and I didn't plan this question, but like out of Duke, Auburn, Houston, and Florida, which team's most likely to not make the Final Four? That's probably something to think about a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. Houston under Kelvin Sampson, the kind of defense that they play and the connectivity that they play with on offense. I mean, they're just a great college basketball team, but they have been prone to some offensive lapses in the past. I think this team obviously has a little more offensive firepower with LJ Cryer, the transfer from Baylor, and a few others. They just have more scores on the floor. But maybe I guess it would be Houston. Florida, they've had a couple of hiccups, but Florida on any given day, I think they're as good as anybody in the country. So, man, those are four good ones, and I think those are clearly the four that kind of stand out. But that somebody's going to get knocked off, and they're probably going to be knocked off, and prior to the Sweet 16, we'll probably lose one of those. So you never know. But yeah, Houston maybe would be my pick, maybe not to make it to the Final Four of the big four ones.
Yeah, Houston or Florida for sure. I'd say Houston because they just don't have the offense and can get jumped by teams just, going unconsciously hitting threes, which we've seen happen to Virginia and other teams throughout the tournament. And so I do worry about Houston. Houston has not been a good road team in general. And you have let's face it, man, a little bit weaker of a Big 12 than we've seen in the past, right? With Kansas playing the way they're playing, with Texas Tech and Iowa State's injuries. I feel like the Big 12 is a little bit down this year. I kind of thought the Big 10 was down too, but you know what? We're not talking about them. I think the 2 seeds probably are the ones that could fail quicker, like the Tennessees, the Michigan States, and maybe Wisconsin, my team. Yeah, that's very possible. They're very beatable at times as well. But I guess we'll see kind of where everything comes out to tournament time. But speaking of tournaments, we have literally teams that are done with their season and just waiting to be seeded, my man. And I think it's great because already we're going to be talking about the smaller conference tournaments. I don't know how much you get into small conferences. I do some. I would say 80% of my plays are the Power 4 to Power 5-ish type. I mean, if you add the Mountain West and if you add the East, the Big East. So I guess let's call it the Power 5, Power 6. But then the other 20%, maybe less even sometimes, of my bets are in smaller ones. But I'll still play a few futures here and there for the smaller tournaments. Do you ever play those futures coming on up when we get these seeds on Sunday, Monday?
And you're talking about in the conference tournaments?
Conference tournaments.
As far as futures in conference tournaments, I really don't bet a whole lot of futures in conference tournaments. I do have a few, to win it all in April. But to me, well, those conference tournaments, and I know we could say this about any aspect of sports betting, but they're just an absolute crapshoot, in my opinion. I'm kind of just a game by game better for the most part, kind of a grinder by my own admission. And, not to be a killjoy, this is not too much off topic, but, my volume of bets percentage wise probably decreases somewhat this time of year, or it does decrease this time of year, not as much value, and so forth. Guys that I network with, just about all of us unanimously, cut back a little bit, even though the excitement's kind of ramped up. But, I still have a lot of action, and my mantra of quality over quantity even becomes more intense in March, looking for those, just a handful of really good bets, hopefully. So, yeah, it's a challenge, a lot of fun.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. I'll have my bets out there. We're going to hopefully do a show on it on Monday. I'm going to try to bring some other people that focus more on the smaller stuff and see, if we can pick their brains a little bit too. Trying to do 364 teams of college basketball by oneself is impossible to do it correctly, in my opinion. Maybe Greg Peterson, I guess, would be the closest that can do it. But it's just too much, man. But I will find, I think there's some conferences that are going to have the 1 seed, like a slight plus money. And I think they should be in the minus. Like, I'm already focused on that. I'm not going to give out any spoilers, but I'll be picking my spots. But let's talk about senior night a little bit, because now a lot of these games, and especially in the bigger conferences, are going to have their senior night. And senior night means a lot to the seniors. And it means not a lot to the team that kind of, I guess, plays for their guys, man. It kind of brings the teams together. Do you have any different approach that you use for senior night?
I'll back up just real quick. I want to throw in, you were talking about the smaller conferences. In the Southland Conference, McNeese State is a team, I think, that even though they're 4 games ahead in the Southland with 2 games to go, so they've clinched the regular season title, but they have to win the tournament. Southland Conference tournament without doubt to get in the field. So I think they might be one of those teams. I think they're going to be minus money though. But McNeese playing at home in the Southland Conference, I think they're going to win that tournament. As far as senior night, we're all experiments of one in our handicapping process, Kiev, without question. And I'm not really a senior night type person, especially, in today's day and age, you just see so many players that are short timers. They're maybe there 1 year. So I don't know that they're as invested in the community and the university and things like that. So, and even if it changes players' psyche or approach to that game, does it improve their performance or does it detract from it because of the pressure and the angst and all that? So personally, I certainly don't fault anybody that uses it, especially if they found ways to use it effectively, but it's just not part of my personal approach to handicapping.
Okay, and that's fair, and that's a great point. Like, if the senior's just transferring in, and he had a senior night already at the school he spent 3-4 years at, right? It's like seriously, dude. I think it's going to be overblown a little bit too, and I think you have to watch for that, because I think if you're a poor team and you're playing a good team that's still vying for seeds and positioning and maybe trying to get a bye in their tournament, watch out, man. It don't matter if you're a senior or not in that. But if it looks like a guy's a senior and he's been with the school a little bit, and if it's a bad team playing a bad team, I'll probably give him a little bump for senior night at home, a little extra point or so, in that type of situation. But I like how you answer that, because it is very situational. So it's not going to keep me off of a good number. If there's a good enough number, and I think the market will factor in senior night too. So, there could be some fade spots, that's where I'm going to fire. So I think people should remember that, and remember what you said about a lot of these guys coming in. There aren't really true seniors of that school. So great stuff on that topic. Let's talk about buy low, sell high, my man. We've been doing this all year. Hopefully find some good fade spots, some good buy spots. I'm going to start with buy low. And I got Iowa State as a buy low team right now. And I was just disrespecting the Big 12 a minute ago. But Iowa State had some injury issues, and they kind of fell from the top 5 on the KenPoms down to 13. I mean, it's very understandable. You go to Houston without your guys playing, right? And they actually had Houston on the ropes that whole game until the very end. Then they go to Oklahoma State without their guys playing. And I'm talking about Keyshawn Gilbert, right? One of their best players that they have. And then you have Curtis Jones that missed some games, obviously. And Curtis Jones is a guy that's hopefully healthy now. He missed the Houston game. And a couple other guys missed that stretch where they lost to Arizona in the last second to make overtime, right? Kansas State and Kansas. So he was without, but he did play the last 2 games. But I think, once they get Keyshawn Gilbert back, I think this team's going to be really dangerous. And I think they're in a pretty good spot this weekend at home against Arizona. So I'm going to be looking at Texas Tech a little bit, Paul.
Yeah. I think
Iowa State.
I was going to say maybe you're looking at Tech too, and I think Tech's another good one to be looking at. But yeah, Iowa State is a team, like you said, with the injuries, and Curtis Jones did play in the most immediate game. So, and I think you indicated that he had returned from injury. So hopefully, if that team gets healthy, I mean, they are they're a capable one. So certainly you can't go wrong with Iowa State as your team there by low. And if you want me to go to my team that I'm going to offer as buy low, I can do that as well. And this team might not be a buy low team, but I think it's a good team to buy, whether they're low or mid grade or whatever. But I think people are kind of catching on to it, and it is March, so it is Tom Izzo time. Michigan State ranked 8th in the nation, so they're not really too low, but these last 4 games, man, I mean, they're just ramping it up. It's almost like they sense that March is on the horizon. Last 4 games they've won, beat Illinois on the road and Michigan on the road as road underdogs. And the same last night as a 3-point dog at Maryland on that miraculous 3-pointer from beyond half court. So they win those 3 games outright as the betting underdog. They beat Purdue at home by 9. And just playing great basketball, a cohesive unit. Tom Izzo, like him, love him, or loathe him, or whatever, the guy can coach some basketball. And they are coming together and just playing at such a high level when it matters most. So I think you have to watch out for Sparty, and it's March again, so they might make another deep
The madness is here. It is Izzo time when it comes to March, at least in the past. I think, maybe the recent last 10 years or so, it's been kind of iffy. But, it's Izzo. These guys are playing hard for him. And, this is a game that I circled to talk about on Sunday. So I'll give you my side on your play, too. Well, what about Sell High? Why don't you go first on Sell High, and then I got one for you as well.
Okay, and this team's not extremely high. Look at the poll here real quick, just the wire service polls. I think they're still ranked. They might be, they're ranked 18th. But the Memphis Tigers is a team that I'm looking to fade in the tournament, maybe even the conference tournaments, especially if they're cast as a favorite. And first of all, no question that the Tigers are talented. They beat in the month of November right out of the gate. They beat Missouri, UConn, and the aforementioned Michigan State. So they've got some horses, and they can play a little hoop. But I just don't have all that much faith, to be frank about it, in Penny Hardaway as a bench coach. As a big time major college basketball coach, to me, he's built for the AAU circuit from which he comes. You look at their last 14 games, and they're only 4-10 against the spread, so they're not exactly hitting on all cylinders. So I'll certainly be looking for opportunities to fade Memphis as it becomes tournament time, again, especially in the favorites role. And then another team, I won't elaborate quite as much on them, but another team that I'll be looking to sell high would be the Alabama Crimson Tide. You got to play a little defense, I think, and I know they're have some prolific scorers and they're very talented on the offensive end, but they gave a few games ago, and I can't remember, one of the teams was Missouri and was the other team Auburn. They gave up a total of 204 points in a 2-game stretch. And I think you got to play a little bit more defense than that. So Alabama might be another team that I would be selling on the high end.
All right. That's wow, Alabama. A lot of people have them as a sleeper to win. And I actually picked earlier in the season Alabama to maybe win it all. But, now I would say Duke personally. I totally agree with Memphis. Holy cow, that's a great fade. I mean, maybe coming on Sunday against UAB, that wouldn't be a bad fade spot. UAB's playing tonight against Wichita State. We'll see kind of what happens. But Memphis doesn't completely have it clinched yet. They have to beat UAB in a few other games. This season's still going on for Memphis here coming up. They have 3 more games, and they all are 13-2 in the conference. And you guys got some 11-3s here with North Texas, who is playing tonight, I think, too. I'll have to double check that. I think they are playing tonight.
Playing at Florida Atlantic.
Yeah. Yes, against FAU, right? Except North Texas is on the road, and I looked at that one. I almost got to North Texas, but I didn't. But a great call. Alabama, I'm going to remain in the middle on that one, but definitely love the Memphis one. And let me know what you think of this one, Paul. And any agreements, cool with me. You know that. I'm going to fade UCLA a little bit. And the thing about UCLA is they were, after that big Mick Cronin speech and complaining about travel and all that, they wrapped up 7-8 Big Ten wins in a row. They happen to get their good teams at home like Michigan State and Oregon. And they happen to, go on the road and beat Washington and USC, which is just across the town, right? The USC, it wasn't that big of a deal. They got Wisconsin at home too, and more of a choke side in Wisconsin. But now they're going to a really pissed off Purdue team on Friday. And then they got to go to Northwestern, who's playing hungry. I'm not a big believer in UCLA. They know they don't have a chance to win the Big Ten. It's not like they can improve their seeding. So I almost feel like, UCLA probably end up a 5 seed or at best, in my opinion. Maybe they can sneak into 4, and maybe that's their motivation. But I'm going to be fading UCLA.
I really do agree with you there, Kiev, as far as the Bruins. I mean, I ask myself when I look at these teams, especially, and I'm a person who more often probably than not, I'm playing against a team at this time of the year than I am playing on a team. And that would certainly be the case with UCLA. And I like to ask myself, what does this team look like when they don't have their fastball? What do they look like when they don't have their best stuff? And you look at this UCLA team, just looking at their schedule here. I mean, they lost at Nebraska on January 4th, lost at Rutgers. Of course, Rutgers got a couple of really talented freshmen, but lost in East Piscataway to Rutgers, lost at home just a couple of games ago to Minnesota. I just think they're vulnerable. I think they let their guard down sometimes, and I'll be looking to fade the Bruins as well with yourself.
All right. Well, they also are tough or a bad rebounding team, and that's, I think, could kill them down the stretch. I want teams that can clean up those buckets, especially in tournament time. So 100% agreement on that. Well, awesome stuff. Let's move to some massive games for the weekend. And I can just predict these spreads the best that I can, Paul. Sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm on. Sometimes I'm saying I'm going to make a play at a number and it's 3 points away. I'm like, what the hell? I can't play it now. But, that's just the fun of it. We have to do the best we can. I'm going to go Auburn versus Kentucky. And this is a massive game this weekend. And Kentucky's, I'm going to say +4 because I think you're just going to get some home love here, right? I think a lot of the efficiency sites, Paul, have it like 5 or 6. And, I would like a 5 or a 6 if that's the case. You're going to have a massive total on this game of about 165 points, man. Kentucky should be at full strength with Lamont Buckler and Jackson Robinson still back in the lineup. They only played like half of the minutes in their last game where they eked out that victory against Oklahoma. Thank God I bet the money line. I took -135. It closed around -150, 160. And I was like, I'm not laying 2 on the road, and I made the right call on that. But Lamont Butler, if you watch that play, he did foul out with 4 minutes left on the block charge, and he was blocking. The truth is, in my opinion, I don't know if you saw that play. I think you shouldn't even blow a whistle on that. I think it was kind of both were in fault. But, either way, he falls out, and he plays great defense. But they showed a lot of gumption to come back and win that game against Oklahoma, at Oklahoma. And, when does Auburn slow down? Trust me, I've got my ass kicked this year once or twice fading Auburn. And this is the only spot that I can think of because I think now that the Cats got their guys back, they play so much better with Lamont Butler, and I think that Kentucky is going to play motivated. And if you don't like that for plus 4 points or whatever you're going to get, I kind of like Kentucky in the first half too, plus 2.5. You're going to get 2.5, maybe 3. I think Kentucky, kind of comes out firing. This is their moment to kind of make up for all those days that Lamont Butler missed, that Jackson Robinson missed. And Kentucky, if you remember, when they were healthy, they were in the top 8, top 7 for a while on KenPom. But, those guys have been in on the line. And don't get me wrong, Lamont Butler is somewhat still injured. The dude is going to play the rest of the season with some shoulder pain and things like that. But this game, I almost feel like he gets that little shot in his shoulder and a little cortisone here or there. And, and I think he's going to come show up against a massive game against Auburn. That's going to have NCAA tournament seeding, possibly deciding where they're going to go, whether it's a 5 seed or a 7 seed type situation, in my opinion. So I think that I'll take 4 points if I get them, but I also like the first half, but I'll just make it a play at flow 4 or better right now for this podcast.
Yeah, I make lines on the games, and I start out with KenPom as my basis, and then use some another gentleman's power ratings that I respect, and then use my own. And I came up with Auburn favored by 5, so I think you're going to get at least 4, and you might get 4.5 for 5. And like you mentioned, Lamont Robinson, I mean, he's their point guard, he's their engine. He played 20 minutes last night, I believe, and Robinson played 12. So like you mentioned, they were just kind of eased back into it, which I think is intelligent. They need to be approaching it from a standpoint of them being fully healthy and at their best come tournament time. And as you also mentioned, I mean, when Kentucky has been fully healthy, they have been quite good. So they've obviously won some, they beat Florida. You go through that gauntlet, and the one at Tennessee, you go through that gauntlet in the SEC, and they've been really good when they've been healthy. And now hopefully they are getting healthy and hopefully can stay healthy. So, I certainly can't fault your position there. I like to play home dogs, and I think it is a spot playing a number 1 Auburn team where you would expect a supreme effort from the Wildcats there in Lexington.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing about Kentucky is that they can play a little defense, and they just need Butler back because he's their defensive, the transfer from San Diego State. That's what this team was kind of missing, the guy that really bring them all together. And so I think those numbers on defense are a little off because of his missing. And then, hopefully so that comes together. And I'm not saying they're going to win outright. I think it's going to be a 2-point game. So hopefully the number cooperates with us. He missed a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games this year. 8 games I see. And just recently, out of the last 10 games, he missed 7. So that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, in my opinion. Let's move on to the next game, one you picked, Missouri versus Vandy. I'm going to say Vandy's going to be a 1-point dog here at home with a pretty high total of around 160. What does your number say, and what are your thoughts on the game that you picked for today's show?
I've got Vandy +2, but I certainly can't fault if it's Vandy +1.5 or 1, because they have been good at home. And that's one of the reasons for my selection here. I think they're 14-2 there in the friendly confines. But, both these teams, Missouri and Vanderbilt, firmly in the NCAA tournament field. Joe Lunardi's most recent bracketology released earlier this week had Missouri as a 5 seed, Vanderbilt as a 10 seed. So Missouri certainly has more wiggle room than do the Commodores. The last several games, Vanderbilt's been playing some really good people. I think, trying to think before the win last night, I think they've won maybe 5 of the last 9. But in any event, they did have a big victory last night, which was Wednesday, February 26th, winning to College Station, defeated Texas A&M there at Reed Arena. So that gives them a little bit of oomph, on their power rating from my perspective, because they did something on the road. So far, so much of their impressive work had been at home, and now they get a notable Tier 1, Quad 1 victory over a quality SEC team on the road. These teams played earlier this year, back on January 11th. Missouri won that game 75-66. The Commodores, though, they were only down Vanderbilt by 1 with under 5 minutes to go. So they were in the game, in position to win there on the road in Columbia. Like I said, they've been a tough out at home, 14-2 on the season, already defeated the likes of Tennessee and Kentucky there in Nashville. I think Vanderbilt's going to win this game outright, plus the 2 or maybe plus the 1 over Missouri.
All right, so Vandy, and sorry, the internet just hicked up for a second. So Vandy, you like Vandy outright? That makes sense. I would definitely lean in your situation as well. My only issue is that Vandy does not defend the 3 all that well, ranking 341st, and Missouri has shot threes pretty well. But I don't think that Missouri is that great on the road either, and I think that's where they can kind of be faded. I think, everything. I think it's time that the market catches up with them. I think they're almost like a sell high. They're definitely a buy low about 2-3 weeks ago for sure. But their away home court splits on Haslametrics, they're only 261st, away, and their away home court splits. So they're a better home team than away team. And Vandy, definitely a better home team. The over is going to be really high in this one. So I'm kind of scared to take the over, to be honest with you. Anything that shows 160 in the SEC is kind of tough, because you know how the SEC is for unders this year. It's been just a fantastic unders conference. Vanderbilt themselves is 7-8 to the under in 8 under 7 overs in conference play. So that's definitely something to look at. And Missouri's just 8-7, but the SEC in general has been in unders. So let's move on to the next game. We have some agreement there. LSU versus Mississippi State. And I might be doing a total in this one. I'm going to say that this is, unfortunately, my man, going to be double digits. And I was really hoping it probably won't be, Paul, but I'm going to be honest. This market's going to have Mississippi State -10 and a total of about 143. Mississippi State coming off quite a few losses in a row. It's been rough sailing for them. At last 5 games they lost 3, but at least it was to Florida at home, and then 2 away, Oklahoma, with a very big shootout, and at Alabama they got bounced, right? Alabama went unconscious and made 22 3-point attempts, which I heard was like the most in conference history or something, I want to say. Something absolutely ridiculous on Tuesday night. But then they also show up against Ole Miss. They beat Ole Miss twice. They beat Texas A&M at home by 14 to 16 points. I want to lay the points with Ole Miss, but I don't know. I think the over might be a better bet, because I think if Mississippi State does cover 10, there's a chance that LSU is going to be putting up points too. LSU fighting down the stretch. Let's say they lost to Florida by only 14 at home, and that's understandable. They played really tight against Tennessee, 2 very good defensive teams right there. And then when they played South Carolina, they blitzed them at home. And then they went away to Oklahoma and won 82-79. So LSU's got a little fight left them at the last couple games. I don't know if they'll have any fight left them in the final game, but I almost feel like Ole Miss can put up as many points as they need to, especially with the way they're going to rebound this ball against an LSU team that's kind of sloppy. An LSU team that turns the ball over. So I'm going to call this over 143 as a play. And, hopefully you're not doing 145 or anything like that. Ken Palm has this at 140, I think 145 or something like that. I got to double check it. So what are your thoughts on this game?
And you're talking about we're talking about the LSU Mississippi State game, first of all?
Yeah. Yes. Same. Yep.
Right. Certainly Mississippi State, the more talented team, and LSU has been, they've showed some incremental progress in their last several games and kept it close. I think some of that's a result of the fact that when these teams come into Baton Rouge, it's kind of an Excel spot, and they're probably not getting that team's best punch. But, they have not been very good on the road. I didn't really look closely at the total here, so I can't really give you a strong opinion there. But I would have to think, with the Tigers or the Tigers play on the road for the most part during SEC play that I would probably have to lean with Mississippi State on the side.
I do too, and and if that thing gets under 10 points, I will hit it. And I did write this wrong. The total will be 147, so I'll be going over 147. But Mississippi State, they play very fast. Their average possession length is 16.6 seconds, which is 68th out of the 364 teams. So they do pace quite well, and their defense has definitely showed some holes this year, especially in the last two games where they gave up 200 and almost I can't believe this. I'm gonna say it's 202 points the last two games against Oklahoma and Alabama. So they've been definitely giving up some points here.
Yeah, that's a lot of a lot of points for sure. So yeah, that's going to be that SEC is something there for sure.
Yeah, LSU unfortunately can't play their way into the tournament anymore in the regular season. They can even win against Kentucky and Texas A&M, and it's not going to be enough to get on the bubble. So LSU might just kind of give up their defense, which you see some teams do. But this is the time of year where I'm okay with laying some big spreads. So I'll take the over 147, but I'm going to lean hard to the Mississippi State side as well. Let's move on to the next game. And you picked this Arkansas versus South Carolina. I'm going to call it +2, 138 is the total, Paul. Let me know if I'm a little off on that. South Carolina, I was on them when they got their first big win against Texas. Man, that was a no sweater last weekend for me. I was kind of happy for that one. I knew South Carolina was going to just dig deep and win one SEC conference game, right? That was the one I picked. But now that they have the second one, does that momentum continue, Paul?
Yeah, I think South Carolina's going to be getting either 2 or 1.5. And, South Carolina, they're 1-14 in the league. You mentioned their one victory defeating the Longhorns this past Saturday. And like you said, it was a pretty comfortable 84-69 win there over Texas in Columbia. But even though they were 0-14 going into that game, you look at their performance prior to beating Texas at home on their home floor in their previous 5 games to beating Texas, and the teams they had played in that 5-game stretch, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Florida, and Auburn. So really good teams. But those 5 teams, they lost all those games, obviously, but they lost 1 in overtime and the other 4 by 4 points or fewer. So they've played really good high-level SEC, First Division SEC clubs, really close there in Columbia. Finally got the breakthrough and got them a win last Saturday against Texas. They're going to play an Arkansas team that obviously lost their 15-point-a-game scorer, Boogie Fland, a few games back. Adu Thero didn't play Wednesday against Texas. He's a guy who's their leading scorer and their leading rebounder, averages 15.6 points a game, 6 rebounds a game. Thero's status for Saturday's game, unknown at the present time. But kind of my feeling is about guys who don't play in the prior game. Until I see him on the floor, I kind of just slightly tilt my handicapping perspective towards them being more likely than not out again. And we're not hearing anything. He's got a back injury. We're not hearing anything one way or the other. So his status certainly up in the air. South Carolina is playing great at home. Arkansas off of a big victory over Texas, their hated rivals, sweep the regular season series from Longhorns. I think South Carolina is going to win this game Saturday there in Columbia.
Woo, that is a hell of a pick. And I am with you on this. And I am also going to make this a play for myself. I'm hoping that it doesn't flip the dog, flip to a favorite quick, right? From dog to favorite because of those injuries. But, Arkansas was, so hopefully the market reacts saying that in the Texas game, since they weren't playing and played really well, which teams kind of pick it up after they lose their guys for a game or two when Thero was out. Maybe the market's gonna be like, well, they can play without him. That's exactly what I want the market to play, because I think that when a key guy goes out, it's not a fade spot the next game. It's the fade spot the game after. That's what I look for. I've been burned way too many times in my life trying to fade people for injuries when the rest of the team just kind of realizes it makes up for it. So I'm with you on South Carolina. As a matter of fact, I like South Carolina. I'm going to call it +1. I like them. I'd like them all the way up to -2 personally. And I think that we'll get that too. So I'll be shopping early on that. That's a great call. You turn me on to South Carolina, so I'm on it. Let's move on to the next game, which is another one you picked. Your side of town, my friend. Georgia versus Texas. I have Texas as a home dog of plus 3 points. I don't know if it's going to be 2.5 or 3 or somewhere. 143 is the total. Why don't you fire away at this one?
Okay, and playing Georgia on Saturday there in Austin, and you've got Texas as a home dog to Georgia.
Wait, let me see. I have Texas. No, sorry. No, I wrote it wrong. I have Texas as a favorite by 2.5 to 3 points.
Right. Okay. Just want to be sure we're on the same page there. Yeah, I've got Texas favored by 3.5. I think Ken Palm has 4. I think it's going to be a little bit lower than that. And one of the reasons is when you look at this Texas team, man, it just seems like their NCAA tournament aspirations go further south with each passing game, and after last night's 86-81 overtime loss at Arkansas, the Longhorns now have lost 5 of their last 6 games. And in that 6-game victory, their only victory was at home where they had to rally against a depleted Kentucky team, missing the 2 starters that we've talked about. So it wasn't Kentucky at full strength by any stretch of the imagination. It was a very depleted Kentucky team. And if you laid the 4.5 with the Longhorns, which I believe was the closing number, then the Longhorns have failed to cover each of their last 6 games. Georgia obviously coming off maybe inarguably their signature victory of the season to this point, that being an 88-83 home win over highly ranked Florida as a 6.5-point home dog. The Bulldogs, not all that good on the road. They're 0-7 straight up in SEC road games this year, coming off that huge game. But still, man, I just don't have any confidence in Texas. They're now 5 games below 500 in the SEC at 5-10. Just seems to be coming apart at the seams for the Longhorns. I'll take the Georgia Bulldogs plus hopefully I get 3.5 and not get the 2.5 that you're projecting, but somewhere in that range, maybe around 3 points with the Georgia Bulldogs over Texas Saturday in Austin.
All right. Internet's taking up today for me a little bit, so I don't know what's going on there, but hopefully it stays through the rest of the show. So here's the thing. I think that Georgia has been a terrible road team, and Texas has been a home team, but I also think Georgia's a better team than Texas, and I also think that you can't always go by that because Georgia, their away games, man, in any SEC away game, just the last 2, Texas A&M and Auburn, right? I mean, those are just grueling games. But that big win they got against Florida, so people think letdown spot. No, I don't think this is a letdown spot because they're on the bubble. They know they can't afford a letdown spot. This is not like, we're in, man. We're in. We're good. Let's go have a couple beers, smoke a cigar. They're not there. They know that they're not there because both of these teams are in a bubble. And man, I'll tell you this: when I bet Texas against Kentucky, when I had to sweat that freaking game out, man. I think I had a money line on Texas at 125. The spread went up to 4.5. It depends upon when you got it because they only won by 4 points. I thought Kentucky had them without their 2 stars. Kentucky was depleted, and Texas just looked all over the place. I think Texas is a terrible bet on team right now, and they probably should have made my fade list, but I didn't. I wanted to make sure that my man that's a Longhorns fan was with me on this. And I mean, I'm never afraid to go against something that I believe in, but I do believe you are correct in this. And I think this is 3 is too much, and I will take 3 all day with you. I will also make this a play. I'll even call 3. Let's hope for a 3.5, but I'll take Georgia plus 3 on the road, and I'm with you 100% on this one. Moving to Sunday, Wisconsin versus Michigan State. And Michigan State's going to be laying about 3 points. I have total 149. Is that fair? Do you have that about 3 points, you think? Because I feel like they're kind of both closely ranked on Ken Palm, and they're going to give 3 for Michigan State.
Yeah, I think Michigan State's going to be laying 4. I was actually on a podcast this morning, and the guy told me he thought they might be laying 4.5. But I think it's going to be a little bit above 3. but I've been wrong before, Kiev. So you could be on the right track there. But I just think Michigan State may be as good as Wisconsin's been. I think Michigan State's kind of caught the public's eye a little bit here in the last week or so. So I'm making it 4, but like I said, your number could be right when it all shows up overnight starting tomorrow afternoon.
You're probably right. And that lucky shot that they had at the end of that game against Maryland, maybe that's what it is. But I mean, we also have to remember that's a lucky shot. And hell, if this is 4.5, I might be forced to look at Wisconsin because I wasn't looking at a side in this game. I'm going to tell you that my number is 2.5. I think that Michigan State should be a 2.5-point favorite. So at 3, I still wouldn't bet it. But 4.5, I'd probably have to get a little bit involved in Wisconsin here. But I like the over a little bit more. I'm more of an unders guy. It's funny you're listening to me throwing out all these overs, but the Big Ten has been an overs conference, and Wisconsin's been a great overs team for the season, not necessarily in conference play where they're closer to 50-50, but this game could seal it for Sparty. So this would have them win the Big Ten regular season, in my opinion, as long as they beat Michigan at the end. That would put things in a tizzy. I don't know. That means they would split if they lost at home to Michigan, and then you have to go to obviously the other parameters. But Wisconsin plays slow, but they play efficient, man. And when they play efficient, other teams have to get out of their defensive prowess and play catch up. And that's what's been happening a lot during the year for Wisconsin. The efficiency has been fantastic. The ball movement has been fantastic. And if you've been watching this rivalry like I have over the past 10 years, Wisconsin knows how to play Michigan State. Michigan State knows how to play Wisconsin too, don't get me wrong. But Wisconsin's weakness is down low, where crawl can be very soft at times, and that's how teams tend to catch up. Sometimes crawl just likes to hang around the perimeter and shoot those 3-pointers, but there's just not a lot of times that we're getting those rebounds. But Michigan State does have the size to score inside of Wisconsin, and that's the big mismatch is with Michigan State and Wisconsin. But there's also a mismatch for Wisconsin. Wisconsin should be able to have some success shooting the ball, not only from 2, but also from 3. I know Michigan State is normally a pretty good perimeter defense, but the way Wisconsin does it with the ball movement has been fantastic. They are one of the best teams in assists to field goals, assist to turnover ratio. They're one of the top teams, and Wisconsin does shoot a lot of threes. They're going to get up there. They have like 3-4 guys that consistently do it, with Tanji averaging about 39% from 3-pointer. You got Crowley in the center at 36%. You got Nolan Winter at 37%. Kamari McGee, when he comes in off the bench, he shoots 54% from 3, and he's our 6th man. So I just feel like there's going to be some raining threes in this game, and Michigan State might get jumped early, and we'll have to play a little bit of catch up. So Michigan State, as far as possible NBA guys, they got 1 or 2 guys down there. Cohen Carr, holy cow, has that guy been an absolute beast, man. He is amazing fun to watch. Jackson Kohler's playing some fantastic ball down low. Their guards have been well. They don't shoot a lot of threes, which is usually a worry about the over. But I think that Michigan State will play to the over at times, like against Illinois, like they did against Oregon at home. And when they play those good teams, they're going to have to keep scoring themselves. So I'll take over the 149, where I think it's going to be. And I think if you wait a little bit on that, Paul, it might go down. But, man, if you're right about 4.5, I'll be invested on the Wisconsin side a little bit too.
Yeah, and I made the number 4, and I'm pretty comfortable with that, but not saying it'll necessarily be 4. But I mean, this is a game. I don't really have an opinion on the side or total, but man, if you love college basketball, especially as we get close to March, this game will actually be played in the month of March, although it's a regular season game. I mean, this is what it's all about. You got a Michigan State team that's playing almost as good as anybody in the entire land. Then you've got a Wisconsin team who has one of the most unlikely stars this year in college basketball. You mentioned Don Tanji, a guy who started his career at Colorado State. I think he played 4 years in Fort Collins, was at Missouri last year and was injured almost the entire year. I think he only played a handful of games there for the Missouri Tigers, and now he transfers to Wisconsin, and he's just been lights out for the Badgers. I mean, I don't have it in front of me, but I know he's had several 30-point games. I mean, this guy can just turn into a an offensive machine. Shoots, like you said, almost 40% from 3-point land. And when you got John Tonji, you got a chance to keep it close. So I'm really, even though I'm not going to probably have any action on this game, I'm really excited about this one and think from a spectator's point of view, it's going to be a great game.
Yeah, definitely one to watch for sure. And it's going to really lay down the groundwork for who's going to be a contender in that Big Ten tournament too. What's nice is both these teams should be top, in the top four, and not have to play till Friday in that Big Ten tournament. One thing I like to remind people is that, and I did in the beginning of the show, is that there's only 15 teams going into the Big Ten tournament. 3 are going to be out. And I think that's very important because as long as, they're not playing decent teams, those teams are bet on teams right now. Those teams trying to fight at that last minute, especially if it's bad on bad. Then you take the dog here, the one trying to fight to make the Big Ten tournament, because there's 6 or 7 teams right now in the Big Ten that's not even guaranteed to make the tournament. They have to win. A couple of them have to win one more. Only one of them has to win all 3 more. So very interesting spots this weekend when you watch the Big Ten, and especially in these under the radar games. Speaking of on the radar, we covered our 6-pack. Let's talk a little hodgepodge, man. What about like a Texas A&M at a Florida, right? Florida coming off a tough loss, and wow, did they come back against Georgia. I thought Georgia was done for. I actually hedged back on Florida at half, plus 8.5. Georgia was up by 20-some points at some point, man, and Florida kind of came back, and I hit both sides, which is always fun to do. I did have Georgia plus the 9.5, or where I can't remember what it was, 8.5 or something pre-game. But this Texas A&M Florida game is interesting to me because a lot of these metric sites don't have it as big as a spread as I kind of think. Ken Pom has this as a 10-point spread, has the metrics has as an 8 or 9-point spread. Does Florida just blow away this bleeding Texas A&M team?
A&M's, they're hurting right now. They've lost 3 games in a row. They're reeling. I thought they were a team a week or so ago that might be a dark horse to advance deep in the NCAA tournament, and they very well still might. I mean, Wade Taylor IV, one of the better guards in the country, but 3 straight losses playing Florida here. I don't really like either side here, and I know we'd probably rather get opinions a little more authoritative than that, rather than, hey, it's a no play. But I don't want to get in front of this Florida team in any scenario. I just really have a lot of respect for Florida. I think they're, again, a team that could win the tournament. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But Texas A&M, on the other hand, they've lost 3 in a row, so they're going to fire their best punch. I mean, they're going to come out. They're going to try to right the ship. They know that they're, they got Auburn after they play Florida, so it's not getting a whole lot easier playing Auburn even at home. So I think A&M's going to fire their best shot. They've lost 3 in a row. They're competitors. I think Buzz Williams is a great coach, and I think they're going to have probably a supreme effort. But with that said, I don't want to back them because Florida's so good and so capable of just running them out of the gym.
It's funny. This could be a good live betting one, Paul, because you got to see where they start, right? Let's just say A&M jumps them, and they're up by 6, 7 points. You're going to get a way better line on Florida. Wait till the 12-minute mark or something, right? The 12-minute timeout, and then you make a decision then. And if Florida's up by 3 points or 4 points at that mark, I'll take Florida minus 13. I think at that point you just know that there's no way Texas A&M is going to be in that game. But I have to kind of see how it starts, in my opinion. When do I want to lay 10? I'm not excited to, man. I think a live betting situation would be better for me, just to make sure I can't get a better line in the beginning of this game. Any other ones on Saturday or Sunday that you've looked at all? It's funny. Gonzaga's going to go play San Francisco, and they're going to be pretty big favorites on the road when they're both tied for second place behind St. Mary's with 4 losses each. It's weird to say that Gonzaga 4 losses each, right? I think San Francisco might have finally found a team that a Gonzaga team that they can compete with this year. So I'm looking at that, especially with Gonzaga going to be a big favorite. You got Texas Tech at Kansas too.
Yeah, Texas Tech's had the injuries. I made Kansas a 1-point favorite in Lawrence in that game, but man, I just like the way that Texas Tech team fights. Certainly no embarrassment, even losing on your home floor to Houston. Houston played a really good game earlier this week in that victory over the Red Raiders in Lubbock. But, Kansas, that's for 18 and 15 in the Big 12 the last couple of years, whatever it is. Just several games over 500. This is a very good Texas Tech team. Might get some of their injured players back. So I'm going to be monitoring those injury situations. Might be taking a look at the Red Raiders plus a small amount of points. Virginia hosting Clemson. I think Virginia is probably going to be about a 7-point home underdog in the ACC. That'll be a game. I'll be looking to take perhaps the home underdog, Virginia, off a victory the other night. So that might be a game as well that I look at. I'm kind of just scrolling down the board here to.
Ole Miss is interesting too because they've been bleeding themselves, and they're going to be facing an Oklahoma team that they just almost beat Kentucky. Now Oklahoma goes on the road. Pretty sure Oklahoma's falling off that bubble. It's like, how much can they keep bringing it? I almost feel like this might be a spot to lay points with Ole Miss. Jeez.
Yeah, I think I projected Ole Miss -7 or so in that game. Oklahoma, they're such an incredible story this year. They played an easy non-conference schedule, relatively easy. But at the end of December, before the start of SEC play, they're 13-0, and they're ranked in the top 10 nationally in the wire service polls. The top 10 nationally. Not saying they deserve to be there, but in the wire service polls, they're in the top 10. Today, they're 14th in the 16-team SEC. So they went from a top 10 nationally to 2 months later, 14th in their darn conference. So quite a fall off the cliff for the Sooners. Porter Moser said to perhaps be in some trouble there, when he came over from Loyola after taking the Ramblers to the Final Four, having so much success there. I think everybody thought that Oklahoma would probably be a player, but this is a tough conference, and some teams are going to lose, and the wins and the losses are going to add up at the end of the year. And Oklahoma, unfortunately for Sooner fans, has just not been very good this year in conference play, and they really have not been good recently on the road. They've been getting blown out by some teams. So, yeah, it'd be Ole Miss or nothing for me in that one.
Yeah, me too. And I might even lay it with Ole Miss. So we'll see where the spread kind of comes up. If the market likes it too much, I'm not going to like it so much. If it's kind of sitting there around the 7 to 7.5 range, that might be a spot where I'm going to fire on them. And just think that Oklahoma's out of gas, and Ole Miss now, after just getting blown out against Auburn, man, that's a hell of a spot to be betting on them the next game, in my opinion. That's a great spot. Let's go to the beer bet banger section, my man. Oh, what's up from Keith Landry? What's up, dude? How you doing? Saying hi. Thanks for popping in, Keith, and watching this live stream. So I'm going to go with Washington as my beer bet banger. And you know what? I'm hoping they're going to be a 3-4 point dog. It's probably going to be around plus 120, plus 140. And I wish I had something better. There's probably some other spots that you want to look at. But Washington is that team in a bad spot where they're like going to miss the Big Ten tournament, but this is their last hurrah. Danny Sprinkle's a better coach than what happened to him this year. If you remember his days at Montana State was good, how well he did last year at Utah State, going 28-7 last year. I think he's going to have the kids rally for one more game here at home to try to just get into that Big Ten tournament, because they have 3 games left. If they win all 3, they can get in. They probably would get in if they win all 3. Indiana, USC, and Oregon. Very winnable games, really. Not necessarily for them, but, in general, I think that they possibly can beat this Indiana team who's maybe feeling a little bit too high after up that Purdue win and that Penn State win, and they have to travel all the way to the Northwest, I should say, in Washington and Seattle. So that's mine, Paul.
Yeah, and I figured that we could just go in any direction that we wished here, so I did. And I'll say, first of all, always remember, listeners and viewers, to shop around on futures. I'm going to give a couple of futures to win it all, because on futures, prices, can vary wildly. I mean, you can get a much better. Some books have a much lower theoretical hold percentage in those markets than others. But St. Mary's right now, to win it all, they're 80-1 at the Westgate today, 80-1 at several other properties as well. And then this team's not going to be listed unless the shop has a pretty extensive board of options. But you can find this team at Westgate and other books as well. McNeese State, 1,000 to 1.
Woo.
Do I think McNeese State's going to win the national championship? Absolutely not. But if they win 2 games, and let me back up a little bit. When a lot of people who bet futures and bet them successfully bet them, they don't make the bet thinking that ticket's going to win. I'm not saying they don't want it to win, but they're betting that future to try to set up a profitable overall scenario. And the profitability comes in the way of hedging. And when you're talking about McNeese State at 1,000 to 1, I mean, they played in Tuscaloosa at Alabama early in the year, and they were in that game the whole way. If you remember, the Tide beat them by 8. I think it was 72-64. Then they went and played Mississippi State in November as well, around that same, probably within 7 days of playing Alabama. And they played that game a neutral site there in Tupelo, Mississippi. Mississippi State won that game by 3. McNeese was in the game the whole way. So if McNeese State, if they win 2 games, they win the first 2 rounds. They got 4 games to go to the national championship. I know how to hedge 1,000 to 1 ticket. So I like McNeese State 1,000 to 1, and then St. Mary's at 80 to 1. Again, they would probably have to win, probably have to get to the Elite 8 to give you some clear-cut hedging opportunities. But I think they're capable of that. They've already beat Gonzaga twice, obviously, in the regular season there in the West Coast Conference. They're so extremely well coached by Randy Bennett. So those are my 2 long shot beer money bangers there. St. Mary's 80 to 1 to win the national title. McNeese State 1,000 to 1 today at the Westgate. And I think those teams, again, not going to win the tournament, but might give us some really attractive hedging possibilities.
Man, wouldn't it be just something to get McNeese in the Sweet 16 and hell, St. Mary's, man, who knows? Maybe everybody gets upset and they're just kind of sneaking on in through their bracket, just like FAU did that year. That would be absolutely amazing. And you know what else is amazing? Paul Stone Sports. What a fantastic guest. Paul, could you tell our listeners and viewers where they can get your great information in place?
Well, first of all, I try to be active on Twitter, or X as it's called now. My Twitter handle is @PaulStoneSports. I try to put out, informative, hopefully informative, well thought out opinions and information relating to primarily sports betting, college football and college basketball oriented. And then if they want to take their interest to an additional level, I also have a website where they can see all my products. My website, paulstonesports.org.
Make sure you guys check out Paul Stone Sports. Paul will be texting. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.